M24 Sniper Weapon System. For the first time since Vietnam, American snipers were helpless. In the mountains of Afghanistan, they were being engaged by Taliban machine guns at up to 1,200 meters, while their M24s topped out at 800. They could see the muzzle flashes. They could hear the rounds impact around their positions. They couldn't shoot back. This triggered a 36-year procurement disaster that cost hundreds of millions of dollars, an emergency Frankenstein rebuild that bought time but solved nothing, a 9-year competition where billion-dollar prototypes failed one by one, including one rifle that actually won the contract before the manufacturer went bankrupt and lost everything, and a final weapon system that costs $20,000 per rifle. Here's what nobody admits. The Band-Aid approach ended up costing more than just buying the right rifle from the start, and the whole saga proves that sometimes the Pentagon's cheapest short-term decision becomes the most expensive long-term mistake. But here's the pattern that explains everything. Every time the Army tried to fix this problem, they bought themselves time and made the next crisis more expensive. That's the engine driving this entire 36-year disaster. Keep that in mind. The problem started decades before Afghanistan. 1988 brought M24 adoption, built on a Remington 700 hunting rifle action, 7.62 NATO caliber, effective range 800 meters. On paper, this was a solid choice for the Cold War era. The Army deliberately chose a receiver that was too long for the 7.62 cartridge they were actually using. Why? Future-proofing. Room to upgrade to Magnum-length cartridges decades later without redesigning the entire weapon system. That single decision would save the rifle's life 30 years later when Afghanistan exposed its limitations. But the M24 had a hidden flaw that nobody noticed until it mattered. The rifle was designed for ammunition it wouldn't actually use in combat. When snipers switched to newer, long-range loads in the early 2000s, the setup was less than optimal, adding a built-in handicap that Afghanistan would expose brutally. Gulf War, Somalia, Bosnia, the M24 dominated every battlefield. On paper, the rifle worked exactly as designed, except nobody had tested it in mountain warfare at extreme engagement distances. 2001 brought deployment to Afghan theater, Kandahar Province, Coast, Logar, Kunar Valley, mountain warfare where engagement distances jumped to 1,000 meters, 1,200, 1,500 across valleys and ridgelines. Taliban fighters with PKM machine guns engaged American positions from ranges where the M24 became useless, not because of poor craftsmanship. Physics. Here's the only thing you need to understand about why the M24 failed. At 1,000 meters, even a modest crosswind pushed the bullet well over a meter off target, enough to turn a headshot into a complete miss. And the bullet slowed down so much that accuracy became pure luck. You could aim perfectly, do everything right, and still miss because the round simply couldn't maintain stable flight at those distances. The M24 was shooting blind past 800 meters. The cartridge, the XM2010 would eventually use, 300 Winchester Magnum, dramatically reduced that wind drift, and it stayed accurate past 1,400 meters, where 7.62 NATO became pure guesswork. The difference isn't technical, it's survival. 7.62 becomes a prayer at 1,000 meters. 300 Win Mag delivers hits you can count on. And at 1,200 meters, 7.62 simply stops working as a combat round. It doesn't have enough energy left to reliably stop a target. 300 Win Mag still carries enough energy to make those hits count. The Taliban weren't out fighting American snipers. They were outranging them with geography and ballistics. Snipers reported being pinned down by enemies they couldn't engage. The psychological impact was catastrophic. Your entire job is owning the long-range battle space, providing overwatch, eliminating threats before they reach your team, and suddenly you're watching muzzle flashes from positions you can't touch while rounds impact around you. The ultimate failure for a precision marksman. And here's the detail that makes it worse. Sniper teams operate in pairs. Sniper and spotter. The spotter's job is target identification, range estimation, wind reading, and security. In 2001 through 2010, most spotters carried M4s or M16s, 5.56 NATO. Effective range maybe 500 meters. So at 1,000 meters and beyond, the spotter couldn't even see the target clearly through his optic, let alone confirm whether the sniper hit. Even if the sniper could shoot, nobody could verify he was hitting anything. The entire sniper team was outranged. Not just the rifle, the doctrine. The Army faced a choice. Buy a completely new rifle system, modern, purpose-built, but that requires competition, testing, contracting, production ramp-up, years. Or upgrade what you already have, fast, emergency. Get something to the field immediately, even if it's not perfect. They chose the emergency option, the same pattern repeating. Buy time now, deal with consequences later. And here's where the spending starts. September 30th, 2010, Remington Defense awarded $28.16 million to reconfigure M24 rifles into the XM2010 Enhanced Sniper Rifle. The contract ceiling covered up to 3,600 conversions. The urgency was explicit in the official announcement. Quote, Army snipers can expect to see an improved rifle with an extended range in the field by Christmas. 90 days from contract award to fielding. That's not development, that's emergency response. The technical solution was elegant but brutal. Keep the Remington 700 long-action receiver. That's the serialized firearm. Everything else gets replaced. New barrel chambered in .300 Winchester Magnum. Extends effective range to 1,200 meters. 50% increase. New adjustable chassis stock with folding capability and monolithic accessory rail. Loopholed Mark IV 6.5 to 20 power scope. Massive magnification upgrade. Clip-on night sight capability. And critically, a detachable 5-round magazine replaced the old internal magazine that required top loading. Massive tactical upgrade for reload speed. The suppressor deserves special mention. The XM2010 came equipped with an Advanced Armament Corporation Titan QD Quick Detach suppressor, 10 inches long, 20 ounces of titanium, 32 decibel noise reduction. This wasn't permanently mounted, it was quick attach. Snipers could remove it for transport or when signature reduction wasn't necessary. The suppressor alone cost approximately $2,000 to $2,500 per unit at civilian market rates. But thermal signature and acoustic signature matter in modern warfare. The XM2010 was designed from the start for suppressed operations. But here's the Frankenstein element. They were reusing receivers that had been in service for 20+ years, metal that had seen countless rounds, desert sand, jungle humidity. The Army was betting those old actions could handle magnum chamber pressures, not 50,000 psi like 7.62 NATO, 64,000 psi. Higher stress on every component with every trigger pull. And there's another hidden cost. The Magnum cartridge wore through barrels significantly faster. What used to last thousands more rounds now needed replacement much sooner. The higher pressure wore out the barrel faster. The XM2010 barrels were consumable items that needed replacement every 2 to 3 years of intensive use. The cheap emergency upgrade came with ongoing maintenance costs the procurement office didn't advertise. The twist rate improved to 1 in 10 inches, optimized for 220-grain Sierra Match King projectiles. These heavier bullets had better ballistic coefficients. They retained energy longer, drifted less in wind, and the 1 in 10 twist stabilized them immediately out of the barrel. No more wobble. The XM2010 fixed the accuracy limitation the M24 had lived with for decades. The gamble worked. $28 million bought a rifle that worked. By late 2010, M2010 rifles reached Afghanistan. Snipers immediately noticed the difference. Engagements impossible with the M24 became routine. The .300 Winchester Magnum retained energy past 1,000 meters. Wind drift decreased. Bullet drop became predictable. Mission range expanded to 1,200 meters, and American snipers could finally match enemy reach. Crisis averted. Lives saved. Problem solved. Except everyone knew this was temporary. The Army didn't solve the underlying problem. They just bought time. And that decision would cost them the next decade. And America's closest allies had already figured out the real solution years earlier. May 2008, the British Ministry of Defense fielded the L115A3 sniper rifle, Accuracy International Arctic Warfare Super Magnum, chambered in .338 Lapua Magnum. Effective range, 1,400 meters and beyond. Schmidt and Bender, 3 to 12 power scope. The Brits identified the Afghanistan range problem in 2007 and had operational rifles in theater by mid-2008, 2 years before the XM2010. November 2009, Corporal Craig Harrison, Household Cavalry Regiment, engaged 2 Taliban machine gunners near Musa Qala in Helmand Province. Range, 2,475 meters. Confirmed kills, both targets. The longest confirmed sniper kill in history at that time. With a rifle the British had been fielding for over a year. The L115A3 cost £23,000 per rifle, roughly $34,000 in 2008. Expensive, but it worked. The Canadians fielded a similar system, the C14 Timberwolf, also .338 Lapua, also operational years before the XM2010. The U.S. Army knew these systems existed. They knew Allied snipers were successfully engaging targets at 1,500 meters plus. They knew exactly what the solution looked like, and the Army still chose the cheaper Frankenstein rebuild using .300 Winchester Magnum instead of adopting proven .338 systems. The emergency mindset won again. And the ammunition tells the same story. The XM2010 initially used Mk248 Mod 1, 220-grain Sierra Match King in .300 Winchester Magnum. This was developed for extended range, but it was still fundamentally a hunting cartridge adapted for military use. Each round cost $8 to $12, compared to maybe $1 or $2 for a commercial 300 Win mag. The Army was spending premium money on premium ammunition for a compromise rifle. The British and Canadians were shooting purpose-designed military cartridges in purpose-designed military rifles. The Americans were shooting expensive hunting ammunition in rebuilt hunting rifles. That's the procurement gap in one sentence. But the XM2010 did its job, and the institutional wheels were already turning. The Precision Sniper Rifle Program, PSR, launched the same year the M2010 contract was signed. The timeline reveals everything. The Army knew the M2010 was a band-aid before they even started building them. Another short-term fix creating the next long-term problem. The pattern holds. The PSR requirements were ambitious. Multi-caliber capability. One platform that could swap between cartridges depending on mission. Extreme range performance to 1,500 meters. Suppressor ready from factory. Modular accessory integration. This was the wish list. The rifle that would replace the M24 and establish the next generation standard for decades. And over the next 9 years, weapon after weapon stepped into the competition. The PSR gauntlet destroyed them all. This becomes a battle royale where only one survives. First challenger, SAKO TRG M10. Finnish precision engineering. Purpose-built modular multi-caliber platform. Aluminum chassis, switch barrel system that could handle 7.62 NATO through .338 Lapua Magnum, cold hammer-forged barrels, outstanding build quality, European craftsmanship. Civilian competitive shooters loved the TRG family. Sub-half-minute accuracy was routine, not exceptional. Fatal flaw, environmental testing failure. The rifle was reportedly eliminated during environmental testing, including dust exposure trials. Finnish engineering optimizes for Arctic conditions, extreme cold, minimal sand and dust. Afghanistan and Iraq deliver the opposite. Desert heat exceeding 130 degrees, blowing sand, fine dust that infiltrates every mechanical tolerance. When your rifle chokes under sustained dust exposure, you're eliminated. No appeals, no second chances. SAKO out. Second challenger, Desert Tech SRS-1, Stealth Recon Scout. Scout, the wild card. Bullpup design. Action and magazine behind the trigger. This creates a long barrel in a short overall package, 36 inches total length with a 26-inch barrel. Perfect for vehicles, helicopters, confined spaces. True multi-caliber capability with removable barrel cartridges. Switch from 308 to 300 Win Mag to 338 Lapua by swapping the entire barrel assembly. Fatal flaw: reload ergonomics and speed. Traditional rifles put the magazine right in front of your torso. Drop mag, grab fresh one, slap it in. Timed tests. 6 seconds average. Bullpups put the magazine well behind your support hand. Reloading requires breaking your shooting position, reaching back awkwardly. Timed tests with the SRS, 12 seconds average, double the time. In prone position, where snipers spend most of their operational time, this is tactically unacceptable. The other problem is trigger quality. Bullpups require long trigger linkages because the trigger sits a foot ahead of the action. This introduces flex and mechanical slop, heavy, creepy trigger pulls. For precision rifles demanding crisp 2 to 3 pound breaks, this is fatal. Desert Tech eliminated. Third challenger, Accuracy International AXMC, the legacy platform. British engineering, Arctic warfare family, the gold standard for military precision rifles for decades. Multiple NATO countries fielded AI systems. Proven combat heritage from the Falklands to Afghanistan. The AXMC offered multi-caliber modularity with aluminum chassis and folding stock. Sub-MOA accuracy guarantees with quality ammunition. Fatal flaw: not modular enough. The PSR demanded true switch barrel capability in the field, user-level maintenance without specialized tools. AI's system worked, but required more steps, and cost likely played a role. AI rifles command premium prices. When you're procuring thousands of units, even small per-unit differences multiply into millions of dollars. Accuracy International rejected. And now the scandal that exposed the entire system. 2013, U.S. Special Operations Command awarded the PSR contract to Remington Defense, the modular sniper rifle, the MSR, designated Mark 21. This looked inevitable. Remington built the M24 for 30 years. They executed the M2010 conversion successfully. They understood military sniper requirements. The MSR featured the RACS chassis, Remington Accessory Chassis System, modular, purpose-built, multi-caliber capable. This was Remington's coronation, the king reclaiming the throne. Finally, after years of band-aids and half-measures, a real solution from the company that started it all. Except Remington couldn't deliver. Special operations units waited. Rifles that arrived reportedly failed specifications. Quality control problems plagued production. Rifles reportedly failed to meet specifications with persistent quality control problems. Manufacturing delays compounded. And underneath it all, Remington's parent company, Freedom Group, was collapsing. Debt load exceeded $7 billion when they filed for bankruptcy in 2018. They filed again in 2020. The corporate chaos destroyed any chance of contract fulfillment. June 2018 brought the end. SOCOM terminated the Mark 21 contract and reopened the competition. The rifles Remington built were rejected. The contract they won was canceled. The former king was dethroned. This wasn't just business failure. This was institutional humiliation. The company that defined U.S. military sniper rifles for 3 decades couldn't execute the next generation. The pattern broke. Emergency fixes stopped working. The Army was forced to find a real solution. Remington out, which left one weapon standing after 9 years of competition and one spectacular contractor collapse. Barrett MRAD. Multi-role adaptive design. And the feature that won was deceptively simple. 2 screws. 2 torque screws in the receiver. Loosen those screws, remove the barrel, swap in different caliber barrel, change bolt face, change magazine. You have a completely different rifle in the field, without an armorer, without depot maintenance. Minutes, not hours. The manual documented the procedure. It genuinely worked as advertised. The MRAD configured in 7.62 NATO for training, cost-effective practice ammo. Switch to 300 Norma Magnum for anti-personnel at extreme range. Switch to 338 Norma Magnum for anti-materiel work. One rifle, 3 mission profiles. The implications were massive. Previously, sniper teams needed multiple rifles for different missions, or they deployed with one rifle and accepted limitations. The MRAD collapsed that problem. Logistically, you maintain one weapon platform. Training transfers across calibers because ergonomics don't change. Scope stays mounted. Trigger group stays identical. Muscle memory transfers. Only the ballistic profile changes. March 11th, 2019. SOCOM awarded Barrett approximately $49.9 million for the Advanced Sniper Rifle Program. The MRAD became the Mark 22. Special Operations adopted first. March 30th, 2021. U.S. Army contract, $49.9 million for approximately 2,800 Mark 22 rifles over 5 years. The Army followed SOCOM. The Marines followed. Let's talk numbers. Configuration 1, 7.62 NATO, effective to 1,000 meters, training and general purpose. Cheap ammunition at roughly $1 per round. Lower recoil. Maintains sniper proficiency without burning expensive Magnum cartridges. Configuration 2, 300 Norma Magnum. Not Winchester Magnum like the M2010, Norma Magnum. Effective to 1,500 meters. This is the anti-personnel sweet spot, and the difference matters. At 1,500 meters, 300 Norma Magnum has significantly flatter trajectory, roughly 30% less bullet drop than 300 Winchester Magnum. It's more accurate at distance, drifts less in wind, stays supersonic longer. This is what the XM2010 should have been from the start. The Army uses M1163 300 Norma ball ammunition. This is a dedicated long-range sniper cartridge designed from the start for military application, not a hunting cartridge adapted for war like the 300 Win Mag the XM2010 relied on. This is purpose-built, and it shows in the performance. But there's a hidden cost. These high-performance barrels wear out noticeably faster than the XM2010. The Army accepted that next-generation capability came with higher maintenance costs and shorter component life. They're buying performance, not longevity. Configuration 3, 338 Norma Magnum, 1,500 meters with heavier bullets and substantially more kinetic energy. The Army uses M1162 338 Norma armor piercing. This is the game changer. At 1,500 meters, this round disables vehicle engines, destroys communication equipment, defeats cover that stops lighter calibers cold. The sniper transforms from precision marksman into strategic asset, capable of destroying high-value equipment from distances where enemies can't respond. The optic is loopholed Mark V, 7-35 power by 56 mm. Variable magnification from medium to extreme long range. First focal plane reticle. Holdovers stay accurate at any magnification. The scope alone costs over $4,000. 10-round detachable magazines compared to the M24's 5-round internal. Reload speed matters in engagements. Suppressor capable from factory. The system works. Field reports overwhelmingly positive. The modularity isn't gimmick. It's practical battlefield capability that units actually use. But here's where the institutional dysfunction becomes visible in the accounting. The M2010 contract ceiling, $28.16 million for up to 3,600 conversions. Simple math, $7,800 per rifle conversion cost. The Mark 22 contract, $49.9 million for 2,800 rifles, $17,821 per rifle. So the Army saved money with the M2010 Band-Aid, right? It was half the price per rifle. Not exactly. That $7,800 figure is just the conversion cost. The base M24 still had to be procured originally. Assume, conservatively, $3,500 per M24 in 1980s dollars. That's over $7,000 in today's money after inflation. The real cost of an M2010 was the original rifle plus the conversion. Ballpark $15,000 per weapon. And here's the brutal reality. Those M2010 rifles are now being replaced by the Mark 22. The Army bought M24s in the 80s and 90s, converted some to M2010 in 2010, used them for a decade, now buying Mark 22s to replace both legacy M24s and M2010s. If the Army had skipped the M2010 entirely and committed to next generation in 2010, what would it cost? 3,600 rifles at $17,821 equals $64.2 million. The M2010 contract was $28.2 million. Theoretical delta, $36 million in short-term savings from the Band-Aid. $36 million. That's the price of 1/4 of a single F-35 fighter jet. For that amount, a rounding error in the Pentagon budget, the Army could have fielded the Mark 22 a decade earlier. Except that ignores PSR program costs, development, testing, contract management, the Remington Mark 21 disaster, and recompetition. All that costs money before a single rifle delivers. And it ignores opportunity cost. How many engagements between 2010 and 2019 happened where snipers used M2010s at 1,200 meters when the Mark 22 could have delivered capability at 1,500? The pattern completes. The Army chose the cheaper, short-term option. Emergency rebuild. Get something fielded fast. But that decision locked them into 36 years of procurement cycles, each one more expensive than just solving the problem correctly the first time. This is the institutional trap. The Pentagon optimizes for short-term budget cycles, emergency solutions that look cheap in current fiscal year, but those solutions create follow-on costs compounding over decades. The M2010 solved immediate crisis, kept snipers competitive in Afghanistan, but it didn't solve the underlying problem, just delayed the inevitable. The pattern held. And here's the technical irony making this poetic. The M2010 worked because the original M24 used a Remington 700 long action. That 1988 decision, long action instead of short, gave the Army ability to upgrade to Magnum cartridges 30 years later. If the M24 had used short action, the entire receiver would need replacement. M2010 wouldn't have been possible. The Army would have been forced to buy new in 2010. The emergency option wouldn't exist. The M24's design accidentally enabled the Army's worst procurement habits. The long action gave just enough flexibility to avoid making hard decisions, and that avoidance cost time, money, and capability. 36 years. 3 rifles, 3 contracts. The M24 failed when Afghanistan's terrain changed. The M2010 was a Frankenstein Band-Aid that worked but solved nothing long-term. The Mark 22 is everything the Army should have bought in 2010. And the only reason it took 9 years and multiple contractor failures is because emergency solutions always feel cheaper than making the hard choice. The M24 survived because the Pentagon kept finding ways to avoid replacing it until Afghanistan forced their hand. The M2010 proved emergency upgrades work when you're desperate. The Mark 22 finally delivered what the PSR promised after a decade of procurement dysfunction and one spectacular contractor collapse. Was it worth the wait? The Mark 22 is genuinely excellent, a generational leap in sniper technology, but the cost was measured in decades and hundreds of millions. lessons. Ask the snipers who spent 10 years outgunned in Kandahar, Khost, and Kunar while the bureaucracy burned through contracts and figured it out. The lesson is simple. The most expensive decision is often the one that looks like it's saving money. Let me know in the comments if you think the Mark 22 was worth the 36-year wait, and be sure to like and subscribe for more.